Welcome to the second hour of the show. I'm Eleni Giokos in Dubai, where the time is just after 7 in the evening. Israel's Benjamin Netanyahu gets set to discuss the next steps in Gaza when he meets Donald Trump later in Florida. Mr. Netanyahu meeting U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Plus, after talks with Ukraine's president this weekend, President Trump says a peace deal could be 95% done, but admits some tough issues remain. And voters in Myanmar head to the polls in the first election since a military junta seized power, while critics say the vote is unlikely to restore democracy. The second time in as many days, the U.S. president is hosting a world leader at his Mar-a-Lago resort in Florida. This time, Donald Trump welcoming Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu. The meeting comes as the Prime Minister faces increasing pressure to move onto the second phase of the Gaza ceasefire plan brokered by President Trump and his top White House officials. One of them, Secretary of State Marco Rubio, meeting with Mr. Netanyahu this hour. We've got CNN's Chief Global Affairs correspondent Matthew Chance joining us from under pressure both from the United States to advance the ceasefire and also from the right-wing elements of his coalition at home who think he's already conceded too much. What is your sense in terms of how this meeting could play out today?
Yeah, I think you're right about that, and I think this is a crucial meeting because you've got these two leaders, President Trump and Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, who are going into it with two very different visions of what should happen next in Gaza. Now, obviously, President Trump is very keen to move on to the second, more difficult stage of his much vaunted peace plan for Gaza. It's a stage that would involve Israel withdrawing from large areas of the territory, Hamas giving up its weapons, Israel handing control over to an international stabilization force, which is still to be put together. All of those things Benjamin Netanyahu quite skeptical about. Whereas Benjamin Netanyahu, of course, he has that right-wing coalition. He's got, misgivings about the next stage of that plan himself as well. And so he's going to be looking at the chaos and the rubble inside the Gaza Strip. But that's sort of being used as a way by Prime Minister Netanyahu of saying, look, we can't move to that second stage yet until these remains come back home. But really, there is deep skepticism, both from Prime Minister Netanyahu and from his right-wing coalition, about moving ahead with that peace plan and all the concessions it involves for Israel.
Yeah, and time is running out. Phase 2 was meant to begin early January, so we are going to be watching this meeting very closely. Matthew Chance in Jerusalem for us. Thank you so much for that update. Now, Volodymyr Zelensky is sharing new details about his talks with President Trump at Mar-a-Lago on Sunday. The Ukrainian president saying the latest plan to end Russia's war proposes the U.S. guarantee Kyiv security for 15 years. But the issue of Ukraine's future borders remain a major sticking point. Mr. Trump admitted Sunday there was still a lot of work to do.
We could be very close. There are one or two very thorny issues, very tough issues, but I think we're doing very well. We made a lot of progress today, but really we've made it over the last month. This is not a one-day process deal. This is very complicated stuff.
All right, so the Kremlin saying, meantime, the U.S. president will call President Putin again to update Moscow on his meeting with President Zelensky. CNN's Fred Pleiken joining us now from Berlin. Fred, good to see you. Security guarantees for Kyiv. President Trump saying 15 years is doable. Kyiv obviously wants a lot longer. Concessions on land and territory still the major sticking point. Lots of progress, but any real decision? What is your sense?
Well, first of all, I think, there has been substantial progress in these talks. And I think one of the reasons for that has been a lot of the work that Steve Witkoff has been doing, Jared Kushner have been doing as well. In fact, the Ukrainians now saying that actually today was another call between the chief negotiator for the Ukrainians, Rustem Umarev, also with President Zelensky on the phone, and Steve Witkoff once again trying to map out the way forward after this key meeting between Zelensky and U.S. President Donald Trump. But it's interesting to hear both sides saying that around 90, maybe 95% of the big sticking points have been dealt with, but it seems as though the ones that are still open certainly seem to be the most difficult ones. First of all, as far as those security guarantees is concerned, one of the things that we've heard from the Ukrainians that it appears clear now what those security guarantees are going to be, that the Europeans somehow are going to be involved, the U.S. is going to be involved. Not much in the way of details beyond that, but you're absolutely right. The duration of those security guarantees is still something where there's a bit of discord between the United States and the Ukrainian side. Volodymyr Zelensky saying President Trump put up 15 years, saying he's willing to do it for 15 years. The Ukrainians saying they'd like something 30, 40, possibly even 50 years, because the current conflict has already been taking so long. The Ukrainians saying since 2014. But the other two main issues, and Zelensky said this as well, was the future of the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant, very large nuclear power plant in the south of Ukraine, currently occupied by Russia, what the future of that is going to be and where the electricity from that power plant is going to go to. But by far the biggest sticking point is, of course, the question of Ukraine possibly ceding territory to the Russians. Volodymyr Zelensky has shown himself more open to possibly doing that, but the Ukrainians are saying they definitely need to hold a referendum if that is to happen. So the people of Ukraine would have to decide, and in order to hold a referendum, there needs to be a 60-day ceasefire. The Russians, however, have already said they're not going to play along with that. They're not going to play ball. They don't want a ceasefire because they believe that it would allow the Ukrainians to regroup. And as if to emphasize that point, Russian President Vladimir Putin a little earlier today pictured with some of his top military brass, and they're talking about some of the gains that the Russians have been making in that Donetsk Oblast that so many people have been talking about, and say some of the gains now open the perspective for the Russians of taking all of that territory by military force. Eleni.
All right, Fred Plyken, thank you so much, live in Berlin for us. I want to get more, and we've got Aaron David Miller, who's a former Middle East negotiator for the U.S. State Department, and he joins us now from Washington. Aaron, great to see you. I mean, we know, and I want to start off with Gaza. President Trump wants to see this peace process accelerate. Netanyahu has been accused of not moving quickly enough. What conversations are you expecting today? Are you expecting to see progress?
You know, thanks for having me, Eleni. It's really hard to imagine that major decisions on any of the core issues relating to implementation of the president's 20-point plan, our 28-point plan, are going to be made today, largely because phase 2 simply is not ready for prime time. I mean, look at it clearly. You've got an international stabilization force which is has not yet been created. You don't have a governing structure in Gaza, no announcements on 15 Palestinian technocrats, and even if there were to be an announcement, how are 15 technocrats going to deal with the reality that Gaza, unlike Gaul, which was divided according to Julius Caesar into 3 parts, Gaza is now divided into 2 parts. 53% controlled by the Israeli Defense Forces and 47% controlled, it's quite clear, they're deploying thousands of Palestinian police paid by Hamas, controlled by Hamas, into the 47% that Hamas controls. So it's very hard to see how any crucial decisions are going to be made because the mechanisms, the instruments that require those decisions have not yet been created. Look, I think Donald Trump and Benjamin Netanyahu don't trust one another. I'm not sure they even like one another. Both are skilled politicians, adept in the art of the con. They need each other. Trump needs Netanyahu to avoid Gaza from cratering, and Netanyahu needs Trump, not just to deal with travails, Eleni, but to help him get reelected sometime in 2026. So I think it'll be a reasonably good meeting. I just don't think it'll be a determinative one.
Yeah. Look, it's a reality check, everything you've just said, and you're right, they need each other, perhaps a symbiotic relationship of sorts in a way. But I want to talk about the complication about phase 2, and you're right, because in the 20-point plan, it was very vague. We didn't have the mechanisms in terms of how to kickstart each phase. And I wonder, because it's demilitarizing Gaza, it's the Israelis moving out on certain parts, it's making sure that Hamas, of course, is also demilitarized. It's got the peace board that will be implemented. I mean, there's so many elements to this. Do you think in some way it could be discussed in terms of how they can kickstart it as opposed to fully implement phase 2?
Yeah, I mean, I think you really broke the code. And I think that kickstarting is going to be focused primarily on the 53% of Gaza. Look, Gaza is 363 square kilometers. It's roughly twice the size of the District of Columbia, where I'm talking to you from. But I think they will focus on what they can focus on. And it will not be trying to demilitarize Hamas. I mean, it took the Brits in the Good Friday Agreement from 1998 to 2005 to decommission the IRA weapons, ultra-constabulatory weapons. Wow. And the IRA was offered a power share in that agreement. Hamas is offered a ticket to nowhere. So there isn't going to be demilitarization. But what there could be, the Emiratis are cooking up a 20,000 unit model community in Rafah to demonstrate that for the 200,000 Palestinians that live in the area that the Israelis control. I can see that getting kickstarted. I can see some deployment by elements of an international stabilization force in the area that the Israelis control, but not while Hamas is armed in the 47% that they do.
I want to move to Ukraine, but I quickly want to ask you a question about Netanyahu kickstarting his re-election bid. And will Trump play a key role in this? We know that Netanyahu is always trying to protect his political, future. What's your sense on that?
Look, no Israeli prime minister, I worked in administrations from Jimmy Carter to Bush 43, no Israeli prime minister can get reelected if the perception is that he is mishandling the U.S.-Israeli relationship. Particularly, Eleni, when you have an American president that is more popular in Israel than the current Israeli prime minister. No. What Netanyahu needs is Donald Trump to give the kind of speech he gave in the Israeli Knesset in October, where he turned to the president of Israel and all but requested, and now he's done so in a formal letter, requesting that Netanyahu be pardoned. Netanyahu needs Trump, not as a bystander, but as an active campaigner if he wants to be reelected. And that makes Netanyahu extremely vulnerable to Trump's pressure should he want to exercise it.
Okay, so I want to move on to Ukraine meeting, Zelensky meeting with Trump. One of the big outcomes is that 15-year guarantee, security guarantee. Zelensky wants longer. It's talking about 30, 40, and 50-year security guarantee. None of this means anything if it doesn't get approved by Congress. Will the American people want to give Ukrainians these security guarantees?
I think the odds of a NATO-like Article 5 commitment that gets ratified by the Senate, the chances of that happening, as far as I'm concerned, are slim to none. The last time the United States gave such a commitment to anyone was a revision of the 1960 U.S.-Japan Security Treaty. And frankly, that kind of commitment would basically assume that Ukraine was a vital national interest to the United States, which an American president would be obligated, if circumstances required it, to deploy American forces and to defend Ukraine against Russia. I cannot see that happening. I cannot see the American public supporting it. And frankly, I'm not sure it is in the American interest to get into a position where we are obligated to defend to send young American men and women to Ukraine. I don't think it's politically feasible, certainly not with a MAGA base, and certainly not with this president.
All right. Well, Aaron David Miller, always good to have a conversation with you. Thank you so much. Appreciate your time.
Thanks for having me. Happy New Year.
All right, and still to come. You too, all the best. All right, and still to come on the show, the first round of Myanmar's controversial election has finished, all while civil war rages, and some parts of the country will have more details straight ahead from the ground. Stick with CNN.
Tomorrow Transformed, in association with NX Nippon Express.
Experts in this area believe that solar power will underpin the world's transition away from fossil fuels. One of the major bottlenecks is in the composition of a solar cell. Commercial solar cells are made from silicon, but another crucial ingredient is silver, a precious metal, expensive and rare. Vince Allen put his mind to this problem while studying at the University of New South Wales. When he cracked it, he put his PhD on hold to launch his own company, SunDrive.
To turn a bare silicon wafer into a finished solar cell, about half the cost is just the use of silver. So it's actually the most expensive solar cell production step. Copper is cheaper per kilogram, 1,000 times more abundant. In 2021, we also made the world's most efficient solar cell, so it's also performance enhancing as well.
What connects the Venus de Milo, the Mona Lisa, a frozen mammoth, and Japan? One Japanese logistics company making the impossible possible. Nippon Express. Since our founding in 1937, we have handled some of the world's most sensitive cargo. We are known for our reliability and meticulous attention to detail, bringing a piece of Japanese sensibility wherever we go. Logistics isn't simply a business to us, it's a craft. We take pride in bringing new value to society. With this spirit, Nippon Express has grown into a global network, operating in more than 50 countries across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. No matter the challenge, we are committed to finding solutions for our customers. When faced with the impossible, we never say no. We are NX Nippon Express. We find the way.
The first round of Myanmar's controversial election is over. The next two rounds will take place in January. The country's military junta seized power from the electorate government nearly 5 years ago. The group's leaders say the vote will restore democratic rule, but critics and human rights groups say that is highly unlikely. Entire sections of the country will not get to vote because of the civil war sparked by the coup. CNN's Ivan Watson brings us the latest from Yangon, Myanmar.
At polling stations across Myanmar's largest city, this song played on a constant loop. An anthem urging citizens to vote. Myanmar's military is holding an election in the midst of a brutal civil war. The conflict triggered nearly 5 years ago when the military staged a coup, overthrowing an elected government and violently crushing subsequent protests. This voter told me he hopes the election would help Myanmar chart a way out of its difficult situation. My family live in the countryside where it's not safe, he says. I want the fighting to stop and wish for peace. The situation in this Southeast Asian country is dire. The UN predicts more than 12 million people will suffer from acute hunger in 2026, with some 4 million people displaced by the war. Meanwhile, the UN Special Rapporteur for Human Rights calls the election a sham.
There has been an escalation of the use of sophisticated weapons of war, helicopter gunships, jet fighters attacking civilian targets in the run-up to this election. If the junta is successful in getting the international community to in any way recognize this as legitimate, then it will be able to entrench its brutality, and things in Myanmar are going to get much, much, much worse.
The military government concedes it can't hold the election in large parts of the country now controlled by armed opposition groups.
Is it difficult to have an election when there's a civil war?
Yeah, safe, says Myoten.
No problem, no problem.
He's running for office with the military alliance Union Solidarity and Development Party.
You lost in the last two elections.
Yeah.
Do you think you have a better chance in this election?
He has reason for optimism. The party whose candidates beat him twice can't compete in this election.
These are the offices of the National League for Democracy, or NLD party. Now, it won conclusively in national elections that were held in 2015 and 2020. But since the coup, many of its leaders have been arrested and thrown in jail.
The UK and European Union say this election is neither free nor fair. But a Myanmar military government spokesman calls their criticism irrelevant. The junta trying to generate excitement for this controversial process. 2 more phases of the election are scheduled to take place in other parts of the country next month. Ivan Watson, CNN, Yangon.
All right, I want to get you up to speed on some other stories that are on our radar right now. British boxing star Eleni Giokos has been injured in a car crash in Nigeria. Local police report the crash killed 2 people. Joshua sustained only minor injuries. The former world heavyweight champion had returned to the boxing ring just 10 days ago, knocking out American social media star Jake Paul in Miami. 3 Turkish police officers have been killed in a shootout with ISIS militants. It happened during a raid on a suspected safe house in northwestern Turkey. Authorities say 6 ISIS militants were killed and 5 people were detained during the 7-hour operation. 2 helicopters collided in flight on Sunday over New Jersey, killing 1 person and injuring another, according to officials. Only the pilots were on board at the time of the crash. A local fire chief says one of them may have been in cardiac arrest when emergency services arrived. And coming up, a new year, a new currency for Bulgaria. 2026 is said to be the year of the euro. We'll show you how the locals are feeling about the switch.
Inside the world's second tallest tower awaits a multi-sensory journey of opulence, where every culture touches the sky. A city of cities reaching the clouds. Burj Azizi, amazing on every level.
A new day has dawned. A continent reveals itself. For us, for them, for everyone. The time has come to unveil a new reality. Live the days, live the nights, see the endless opportunities. Dream of the future, of all you can become, wherever we roam and however far we roam. Let's share our passions, carve our legacies, be all that you can be, moving forward without limitations, because the world is out there, ready to be explored.
Bring in the new year around the world with celebrations in every city at midnight. New Year's Eve, live on CNN.
Join me, Larry, as I introduce you to Africa's trendsetters. See how they use their talent, resources, and passion to make a difference on the continent. This is African Voices Changemakers.
Meet the music execs who are taking Africa's talent worldwide.
It's not just about being viral. It's about building a community and having the culture. If you have a community, you can sustain your career.
African Voices Changemakers on CNN in association with Glow.
Welcome back to Connect the World with me, Eleni Giokos. Now, big changes are coming to the economy in Bulgaria, which will transition to the euro at the start of the new year. That's on the 1st of January. It comes just 2 weeks after the Bulgarian government resigned amid widespread protests over alleged corruption, as well as the state of the economy. CNN's Linda Kincaid has more.
Dual pricing at a Bulgarian grocery store. The cost of goods displayed in both the outgoing Bulgarian currency of what customers can expect to pay January 1st. Bulgaria adopts the euro as its official currency. It's taken many years for Bulgaria to meet the economic criteria to join the euro after becoming a member of the European Union back in 2007. And now that the time has come for the switch, Bulgarians are divided on how it will affect them. Some people say it will be good to integrate more with other EU countries.
Because in the entire EU, the euro can be used. Not only older people, but also young people can easily travel using euros instead of having to exchange currency.
Says that about half the country, which is one of the poorest nations in the EU, is skeptical, fearing the change will drive up prices.
I am against it. First, because the lev is our national currency. Secondly, Europe is heading towards demise, which even the American president mentioned in the new national security strategy.
Euro starter coin kits are now being circulated. Analysts say there may be some confusion, especially amongst the elderly, as people use the new banknotes and coins. But some processes will be automatic. Lev bank accounts will be converted into euros on the first of the year. A necessary adjustment period, according to some economists.
First and foremost, it will further integrate our economy. In the end, at least our central bank will become a full member of the European Central Bank family and will have the right to participate in decision-making.
But the transition comes at a time of political turmoil in the country. The Prime Minister resigned in December after less than a year in office, following weeks of mass protests against corruption and a controversial 2026 budget proposal, which means Bulgaria's entry into the Eurozone will be happening as the country tries to form a new government. That's a lot of change in the new year. Thing is certain. As of January 1st, there will be a period of 1 month where there will be dual circulation of both the lev and the euro for payments. And after that, the euro will be Bulgaria's sole legal tender and the lev part of the country's past. Linda Kincaid, CNN.
Right, that's it for Connect the World. Stay with CNN. I'm Eleni Giokos in Dubai. Global Perspectives is up next.
Architecture student at Ciudad de La Paz. I'm really proud. I'm grateful to be standing in a city with a lot of opportunities. It's a low density capital. There is a lot of green spaces for living and leisure. And the architecture of the city is designed to be in harmony with the natural environment. It gives me hope. We don't have to leave our homes to dream big.
Hi, this is Mark Bittman, and I am wishing all of us a better food system in 2026.
In a divided America,
where do I fit? You tell me, ask your partner.
Abby Phillip brings all sides to the table.
Can you name one thing you do differently? The hypocrisy is so rank, folks at home.
To talk about the issues.
Congresswoman, it is false. The answer is zero.
The policies.
What is the Democratic Party about? Can you answer that question?
And the biggest debates to wrap up your day.
I hear what you're saying Trump believes in, but do you think it's a good idea?
News Night with Abby Phillip, Tuesday through Saturday on CNN.
CNN Academy is turning 5. From Abu Dhabi to the world, we're empowering the next generation of global journalists.
Welcome to CNN Academy. We have 140 students from all around the world.
We've delivered more than 1,000 hours of immersive learning and hands-on training.
It's been an incredible week.
Partnering with leading media organizations and universities from across the world, we bring the newsroom to the classroom. Find out more at academy.cnn.com.
I am Iván Pérez Armenti in Buenos Aires, and this is CNN.
CNN, we deliver breaking news, in-depth analysis and engaging storytelling. Now in a network first, we're bringing that journalism to life, on stage, through global perspectives. This live event series gathers world leaders, top executives and change makers for conversations with some of CNN's biggest names. For our first summit, we're focusing on Africa.
Africa is really consequential.
A continent driving the next era of growth, innovation and cultural influence.
I think all arrows point to Africa as the great opportunity.
African youth are a wonderful force for progress for Africa. You are the future. That's what gives me hope.
We're exploring the forces that will help shape the next century and how Africa will in turn shape the world. I'm Zain Asher and this is Global Perspectives on Africa.
It's a typical grey November's day in central London, but it's no ordinary day for CNN. It's the launch of our Global Perspectives live event series, the Spotlight Africa and its growing importance on the world stage.
How can Africa use the assets it has to better strengthen itself so it can deal with the world on an even stronger basis?
In a world shaped by tariffs, technology and tension, one voice stands out. Ngozi Okonjo-Iweala, Director General of the World Trade Organization and former Finance Minister of Nigeria. She's one of several leaders at Global Perspectives on Africa.
Give us a health check of the African economy. I know there are many countries, but in general, as a continent...
The continent is forecast to grow now by the IMF at about 4% for this year and next year, which is 1 percentage point almost above global growth. By 2050, there will be 2.5 billion people in the continent. It will be, I think, the second largest concentration of people. That's market demand from the trade side, so don't look at Africa as a poor place, but look at it as the market for the future, where you need to be making connections and doing business now so you can take advantage of that demand. We've got to be up with the technology and the AI and so on. We have 30% of the world's mineral resources, those that are needed for the new technology. We have 67% of the world's arable land. And I could go on and on.
Upstairs from the event space, I had the chance to sit down with Dr. Ngozi one-on-one. For her, the challenge is turning potential into performance and reforming the trade system itself.
Africa is clearly, because of so much economic potential, it's going to be a central player going forward in the next century ahead.
Africa is really consequential and will matter. With the unprecedented disruptions that we're seeing in the world's economic system, even the conflicts, the politics, everything is disrupted and is very difficult. I think it is time for Africa to focusing hard on itself and say, how do we work better with each other so we can deliver?
As the head of the WTO, just talk to us about the importance of multilateral trade integration, especially as it pertains to something that is so important for Africa, which is sustainable growth and, more importantly, inclusive growth.
Well, multilateralism is under attack. There's no doubt about that. And multilateralism needs to change. It's not your grandmother's multilateralism anymore, okay? It has to be a new multilateralism that takes account of the AI revolution that is happening, the need to be more nimble, more flexible, and certainly my organization, the World Trade Organization, we are recognizing that we have many changes and reforms we have to deliver to make ourselves nimble, flexible, good for Africa, and good for the world.
Despite the opportunities and potential, she admits there are major challenges for Africa.
We have to deal with several challenges. Investing in infrastructure is certainly one of them. Lack of infrastructure, ports, Electricity is the number one. We need to tackle the challenge of skills and education, connectivity. We have the African Continental Free Trade Area, which is, I think, one of the best things we have going on to accelerate the workings of the organization, because we are trading with ourselves. We need to reduce trade costs. When you're trading, it costs 20% more for us to trade with each other on the continent than with others externally. Something is wrong with that.
Dr. Ngozi and many others are looking to the African Continental Free Trade Area to clear those barriers.
Trade is related to connectivity, trade is related to investment, trade is related to policies that are able to be predictable, transparent, more coordinated among countries. It's not just one country, but if we take a look at the 54, we need to be working closer together, and that's what's happening with the African Free Trade Agreement today.
We have invested in Africa over $3 billion in the past. We're going to invest $3 to $5 billion in the next 5 years. Africa, for us, and we are everywhere in the world, is the biggest growth we see in businesses in Africa. I'll give you an example. One port we have in Senegal does more business than all our ports in Europe combined. So Africa has the highest growth.
But Africa's rise isn't just economic, it's geopolitical. And as new alliances form, old conflicts still test the continent's resilience. In the heart of Africa, peace remains fragile. Decades-long fighting involving scores of militia groups has persisted between the Democratic Republic of Congo and Rwanda, despite a peace agreement brokered by the Trump administration earlier this year. In November, both countries did agree to an economic pact in Washington, seeking to implement that peace deal.
The most important thing is peace. We are convinced that only peace will enable us to have a positive evolution for the country.
Billionaire businessman and philanthropist Mo Ibrahim says conflict hasn't delivered anything to the African people, also urging peace.
We have about 17 conflicts in Africa today. And our message always has been, we need peace. We need peace and security for our people. Without peace, you cannot have development.
He encouraged the continent's next generation to take the lead.
I think African youth are a wonderful force for progress for Africa. The old generation, we failed Africa. We have to accept that. We failed really to develop the continent, to manage its resources, etc. The young ones are much more better educated than us, better connected than us. They know what I always said, if young people in Africa formed a political party, they will take power in every single country in Africa. And what is needed is not to go in the street and demonstrate. Go to the ballot box. Organize yourselves and you take over. Don't look for us. Don't vote for us. Vote for yourself. You are the future and you are more capable of really moving the country forward. That's what gives me hope.
Dear Africa, thank you for your energy, your inspiration, your voice. We've watched in awe with every call made, every story shared, every dream chased. And today we celebrate 300 million people connected as one Indian nation. The future is alive with endless possibility, and it starts with just one simple word.
Yellow.
Is to South Africa.
Everyone is coming to learn from what we've done here.
It's a benchmark project.
Allowing trade to happen as freely and as efficiently as possible.
Something that will touch thousands of families.
It all starts with an Ethiopian smile. In every beat, we find our stories. Take the rhythm to the comfort of your seat. Your innovations deserve to soar onwards. Find joy in every experience. Enjoy your time with the best moments of entertainment. entertainment. Take the lead in your career, we'll take the lead in serving you. Your hard-earned success matters. Stay connected with your business. Every journey is a chance to see more, to be more. Find culinary excellency and fine dining in the skies. Feel original tastes. Share your awe-inspiring moments with the world, and let us share the world with you. Turning dreams into reality. Ethiopian Airlines, the new spirit of Africa.
I'm Kylie Atwood at the State Department, and this is CNN.
Hello from London. This used to be the former U.S. Embassy. Now is the Chancery Rosewood Hotel, and we're here for CNN's first ever Global Perspectives event. We'll bring our journalism from the screen to the stage. Some of CNN's biggest names, Christian Amanpour, Richard Quest, Jim Shudo, my colleague Zain Asher, Eleni Giokos are all here. Melissa Bell as well. Follow us to see how it all comes together.
Welcome back to Global Perspectives on Africa. The new digital economy is the engine powering Africa's transformation, turning startups into unicorns. So how are investors and entrepreneurs expanding global innovation? Let's take a look.
Africa is one of the fastest growing digital markets in the world. Yet, less than 40% of its people have internet access, according to global telecom and industry reports. That gap is both the challenge and the opportunity, says Ebenezer Asante, Senior Vice President of Markets at MTN, a South Africa-based telecoms giant.
We are getting into a space where, without a partnership and working together, not only with our competitors, but also with other investors, with government, as well as even multilateral agencies and development fund providers, we are simply not going to be able to cover the next 1 billion people.
For the big telcos, connecting the unconnected is just the beginning. For entrepreneurs, the digital boom means something even bigger, financial independence.
We help businesses and consumers in Africa pay and get paid across the continent. Be it consumers in Africa or in diaspora, global companies anywhere in the world, if you want to pay and get paid in Africa, the only way to grow digital payments is to enable the players to actually be able to play and let the guys who have the infrastructure, the licenses, the know-how, the technology to actually be in the market. That's what they've done already. But that said, we're still behind, but we're getting there.
So we're halfway through the day of the CNN Global Perspectives on Africa. My hair has completely gone flat, so this is the only moment I have to talk to you. I had a fantastic panel with Limbai Masiwa as well as her mother Tsitsi, and the conversation really worked around who wins when women lead. And the answer to that question is absolutely everyone. And here's the data, that women contribute 13% of Africa's GDP. And that's probably a gross underestimation because they account for a large part of the informal trade that we're seeing. They are keeping families and communities together, and they are mostly the breadwinners of the families. And by the way, they also account for a huge part of agricultural production on the continent. So our conversation really just went around how do we uplift women, and why haven't we seen women being uplifted to the extent that would be an even greater contribution to GDP? And the answer is because institutions and banks are not giving them money to make their dreams happen. So how do we break those barriers?
Africa's scale and digital ambitions are attracting new players from Silicon Valley to Shenzhen, and perhaps no one knows that better than Google. Africa Managing Director Alex Okosi says building the right infrastructure is key to the digital transformation.
We are focused on doing foundational work that's going to be able to accelerate Africa's growth. To enable access, right? So we're building infrastructure and access. We're training a really capable workforce that's going to leverage AI to be able to build Africa. We are building compute locally with a cloud region in South Africa that we just launched And at the same time, we're also enabling startups and with partnerships and funding them.
Jim Sciutto here at CNN Global Perspectives on Africa. Just came off the stage speaking to a professor from the University of Cape Town, Carlos Lopez. And it was a great conversation because he was discussing the number of good news stories from Africa, some of the fastest growing economies in the world, the youngest population in the world, and something that I think is particularly important for Western audiences, that Africa is much less dependent on trade with the U.S. than I think many people imagine. Just 9% of its trade with the U.S., for instance, 18% with China, a lot more with Europe, and a lot more within the African continent. It's something worth following very closely.
It's not just about growing Africa's economy, but making sure more people are included. One of Africa's most influential business leaders is championing what he calls Afri-capitalism.
We identify young African entrepreneurs. Every year, we provide non-refundable seed capital of $5,000, between 3,000 and 5,000 young Africans all across all 54 African countries every year. And that is Afri-capitalism.
His foundation wants Africa's economic growth to be sustainable and inclusive.
I think that inclusive capitalism in Africa, it's not about charity, it's about value creation, it's about inclusion, it's about addressing, making sure that businesses don't work for profit alone, don't work that's a lot, that they work, and at the core of what they do is community.
So I'm at the CNN Global Perspectives.
Dear Africa, thank you for your energy, your inspiration, your voice. We've watched in awe with every call made, every story shared, every dream chased. And today we celebrate 300 million people connected as one Indian nation. The future is alive with endless possibility, and it starts with just one simple word.
Yellow.
We have tremendous amount of resources, but Africa needs local champions.
And ensure that the wealth of the continent stays on the continent.
To be an African company creating such impact, it's very rewarding.
Welcome to Angola, the undiscovered, the pristine. Arriving to expansive, vibrant cities, vast and ever-growing, onto deserts, waterfalls, and wild beauty. A breathtaking journey waiting for you. Angola, ready for discovery.
What connects the Venus de Milo, the Mona Lisa, a frozen mammoth, and Japan? One Japanese logistics company making the impossible possible. Nippon Express. Since our founding in 1937, we have handled some of the world's most sensitive cargo. We are known for our reliability and meticulous attention to detail, bringing a piece of Japanese sensibility wherever we go. Logistics isn't simply a business to us, it's a craft. We take pride in bringing new value to society. With this spirit, Nippon Express has grown into a global network, operating in more than 50 countries across Asia, Europe, and the Americas. No matter the challenge, we are committed to finding solutions for our customers. When faced with the impossible, we never say no. We are NX Nippon Express. We find the way.
I'm Eleni Giokos in Dubai, and this is CNN.
the first ever CNN Global Perspectives event, hearing from the voices shaping the world as we know it. The next engine of growth isn't just going to be technology. It is culture, it is creativity, even luxury. These are some of the change makers defining the trends of tomorrow.
I'm looking at that.
At the intersection of art, craftsmanship and identity, few have made a mark quite like fashion designer Oswald Boateng. Born in London to Ghanaian parents, he's a pioneer of contemporary tailoring.
I think when you see a finely executed piece of, African design, there's no argument around it.
Boateng broke barriers in the mid-1990s, opening a store on London's historic Savile Row, shaking up one of fashion's most traditional institutions.
I started in the early 80s, and the world was a very, very different place. If you looked like me, you really weren't. The opportunities were, not that they weren't there, but it was really hard, right? And so when I decided to open up on Savile Row, I knew already that if I could do that, then I could have huge impact on perspectives. Because at that time, the perspective of what it was to be black back then was very limited.
His work fuses classic British tailoring with the spiritual and cultural symbols of West Africa. From Kente-inspired prints to Adinkra motifs and jewelry designs that signify hope, his creations tell a story of heritage.
There's a cultural component and there's a spiritual component.
At Global Perspectives on Africa, he shared his dream from the beginning.
When I realized I had a talent for designing clothes, I very quickly went, how do I use my creativity to make a bigger point? I thought, where could I have the biggest impact culturally? And so I went to Savile Row, and I realized an opportunity when I got there, that the street was a bastion of British tradition, actually, but it was dying, right? And it needed a revitalization to a new audience. And I recognized that I could do that.
Earlier this year, Boateng's designs took center stage at the Met Gala in New York. Themed Superfine, tailoring black style. He dressed more than a dozen guests from Burna Boy to Thames, bringing his craftsmanship to one of fashion's biggest events.
The Met Gala was an interesting thing because the theme sounded like it was just written for me, right? As a 360 black culture experience. Because it's not just African American, it's African, it's Caribbean, it's all the components, right?
Boateng is a powerful example of African and African-descended creatives redefining modern luxury.
I think where we are in the world today, I think all arrows point to Africa as the great opportunity. So I think that kind of connection is a very important part, and I think if you combine that with creative spirituality, which is very much the space that I live in, I think that's a space that a lot of African creators also live in. Even if they don't consciously communicate that, it for sure is inherently in their spirit.
How important is showcasing your heritage and the heritage of the continent as a whole when it comes to how you approach design and luxury?
Again, when you're creative, I'm also influenced by the fact I was born in the UK. But I think as a creative, we're always looking at influences as a global proposition. So the reality is we're all very much connected. And I think, as a continent of Africa, I think we unfortunately have been misled to see more divisions within ourselves than there are things that we can look at and say we share, right? And so again, I think the future is more about recognizing what the truth of the continent is, what the true connections are. And as a creative, I feel a responsibility to crystallize that in the work.
Africa's creative influence doesn't stop at fashion. Across music, film and literature, the continent's cultural impact is growing. Orange is the New Black actress Uzo Aduba reflected on her Nigerian heritage being at the core of her creativity.
My mother, when I first moved to New York, gave me the best advice of my life. Said, Uzo, just work hard. Yeah. She said, I've never heard of nothing coming from hard work.
That's
okay?
True. That's very true.
And the spirit of that tenacity, the spirit of that discipline, the spirit of that vision is what I bring to my work. And that is uniquely African.
One of the most celebrated writers of the generation, author Chimamanda Ngozi Adichie, rounded out global perspectives on Africa. She's a literary icon whose words have shaped how the world sees Africa, womanhood and identity. She's African creatives to boldly take their place on the world stage.
Storytelling needs to be more culturally confident. Right? We have to assume that we are at the center. Write stories assuming that they're at the center, as they should. And I think about when I was growing up and from everywhere, and I went through a phase when I loved the Russians. So I was just reading this little dark, gloomy Russian novels and loving them. Something about the depressive strain in them appealed to my dark side. But I remember, now I look back and I think, Dostoevsky was not thinking about me when he wrote his novels. But I read them and I got them. Right? He wrote from a place of assuming that his own specific was universal, which I think is what we should all do. I think a story well told, no matter where it is set, will find its readers. I've always believed that.
All right, that does it for this edition of Global Perspectives on Africa. We came together to discuss some of the urgent issues facing the continent, and we spoke to some really important change makers. The momentum is undeniable. Africa isn't just growing, it is emerging as a central player for the future.